Welcome to the Tenaroo Foundation's webinar series. This session's topic is System-Wide Admin Users, Reports, and Settings. In this session, I will cover all the elements in the Tenaroo Legacy Air app, including installing the app and getting it to run on your computer, managing admin users, and pulling system-wide reports, especially for accounting purposes. I'll also go through some other system settings that are managed in the Legacy Air app. So let's talk about this Legacy Air app. Several years ago, we did a major system overhaul where we moved from our old Flash interface to the modern web app we all work in from day to day. A few of the system level features remain in the old interface for now, and these will get moved over at a later date, so everything is all in the main system, accessible by phone, tablet, or regular computer. Some settings managed in the Legacy Air app include admin user accounts, the master GL list where you can do more management there, system settings for requiring contact information for groups at the checkout, the master locations list including event campsites and deleting locations, and system-wide reports, particularly for accounting purposes, like I said. Admin users who do not need to access any of those elements do not need to install the Legacy Air app. For those admins who do, let's walk through installing the necessary software. So the first thing you'll want to do is go ahead and log in to the browser app for your system, and then click on Settings from the admin menu on the left side of the screen. This will open a box that describes the Air app and what features it's used for. Step 1 is to click on Get Adobe Air in the bottom left corner of the box, and that will take you to the Air Installer Instructions page on our admin manual. Click on the green Adobe Air button, and that's going to open a new website from Harmon. And this also describes what the Adobe Air runtime does, and you will have two options. You'll want to download the version of Adobe Air that is appropriate to your system. And then this will download the Adobe Air framework application that allows our legacy app to run. Now you will need an administrator's credentials for your computer to install both of the apps that we have today. Okay. And I already have Air on this computer, so it's offering to update it. I'm not going to run through that update today, but once that is installed with the admin credentials, you can go back to your Tenaroo system. And in this same Tenaroo Air app box, you also have a button to get the Tenaroo Air app. You will download that and install it on your system. And again, I already have it on this system. I didn't uninstall it for the webinar, so I'm going to cancel out of that, but you'll need to just follow the process on the computer to get that installed for your system. Once you have the app installed, you can do a few things to make it easier to access. You can pin it to the taskbar, and this works on both Mac and there's a version of that on the PC, or you can add a shortcut to your desktop. Once you run this app, you'll select your console from the System dropdown and enter your regular Tenaroo credentials for logging in as an admin. If these are saved in your browser and you don't remember exactly what they are, you can go into your browser's password security settings and retrieve that password so you can use it in the app. All right. Now, there are a few times where there are issues with running this app on a computer. For Macs, using the Apple Silicon M1 or ARM hardware, there is a known issue with some Air applications failing to launch. Let me go back to my browser here. Both on our Air installer page, on our admin manual, and the Harman website, the workaround for this is posted, and that is to go into your Finder window and bring up the Air application, right-click and choose Get Info, and then there's a dialog box where you can select the checkbox to open using Rosetta. So if you're on a Mac that's newer and uses the M1 hardware, you can use this to get this app to run on your computer. If this isn't the issue and you run into some other issue with installing or running the legacy Air app, you can send us an email to support@tentaroo.com or schedule a training, and we will help troubleshoot the issue. Now, we will notify councils when these remaining features are complete in the new system and when this app is no longer needed. But now that we are logged in, let's take a tour. Most of the content that was in this version of the interface is moved over to the web app, so I'm going to focus just on those elements that are still here, starting with options. The main tab you will need to visit under Options is Admin Users. This is where you will add, edit, and remove admin accounts. When a new council joins us, we will set up a few primary admins to get you started. We offer training on how to manage admin accounts, but it is each council's responsibility to add, edit, or remove their own admins. Now, when you're looking at your list of admins, the Tentaroo support admin, that's us. Please do not modify or delete this account. Just leave it there because that's how we get in to provide support when you have questions about your system. When you're setting up admin accounts, there are several best practices to keep in mind. Every admin gets their own account for liability and accounting change tracking. You'll want to set only the appropriate required permissions for the responsibility level of each administrator. Don't grant too many permissions. More than what they need could be a problem. On each admin account, the email address or the login ID is the email address. So whatever you enter in this field will be how they log into the system. If the individual also has an end user account, they cannot set their login ID on that account to use the same email address as the login ID for the admin account, or the system will always log them in as the user account instead. Now, this is an easy change, though. Just set a different login ID for their user account. When you have admins leave the council or are no longer in charge of managing the system, delete those accounts so they can't log in and access, and there's no concern about them getting in when they don't have that responsibility level. And camp staff only need access during that summer camp season, so you can delete their accounts when the camp season is over. And if they're returning next year, you can display deleted users and restore them so they can perform their role again for next year, but they are not granted access in the off season. All right, so let's look at adding a new user and going through all of those permissions. To add a new user, you can click the New User button here or the New button down here, and either one will launch a new form where we can start adding an administrator. You'll want to enter a valid email address for the user and an initial password. And if the new admin is helping fill out their account details, they can set their own password when the account is being created. Otherwise, if you're setting up the account without them present, you can set a temporary password and advise them to use the Forgot Password button on the login screen of the main app to set their own password when they first log in. So I'm just going to enter in some details here to get us started, but we will revisit this in a little bit. And we'll set the first name and the last name, but the phone is optional. You do not have to enter it there, and it's not used anywhere in the system. Now you can start adding permissions for what this user will need to be able to access in the system. For now, I'm just going to go through each permission and explain what that will be granting, and then I will come back and add a few users based on common council roles. So the first section we have is the general permissions, and these cover the core system functions. In general, these permissions are not module specific, but there are a few exceptions to that, which we'll talk about. If you hover over the blue question mark or help button, this will show a box with help text about each permission and what functions it includes. We also have these with more up-to-date descriptions on our admin manual. And we will talk about all of that later, but you can come in here to review this at any time. So the first permission level we have is System Admin. And I'm not going to click on this right now because if I did, it would highlight everything and I'd have to go back and undo everything. But when you check this box, it is going to grant this user all the permissions in the system. And this also grants the ability to edit GLs. Now, best practices on adding system admins is only grant these to a handful, 2 to 4 key or core staff members who need to manage all aspects of the system, including adding or editing admin accounts and GL accounts. You want more than one, so you have a backup. So if someone's on vacation, you still have someone in the office that can help with admin accounts, but you don't want too many since system admins can edit everything. And you don't want to grant too many permissions, especially if your staff don't have training to handle the level of permission that they're granted. Adding too many system admins can be a liability issue, both for the council and for the user who shouldn't be a full admin. Add more system admins only if those are specifically needed for your council, and keep that to a minimum. The next permission level is Manage Admin Users. The Manage Admin Users allows the administrator to add, edit, and delete admin users, and this has some built-in limitations. With Manage Admin Users, the admin cannot give themselves more permissions than they already have, and they cannot grant permissions to others that they don't already have. For example, the summer camp director could have Manage Admin Users checked, and then under Events Permissions, they are only allowed to manage the summer camp event type. When they are adding and editing other admins, they can only grant or revoke access to event types they themselves have access to, so they should only be able to edit their summer camp event type. The next permission is Manage Products. And products were changed in the new interface to be event specific. So the Manage Products permission for the general whole system is no longer being used. To grant the admin the ability to manage products for events, they will need Manage Event Types for the event or events they are responsible for. And I will show that permission on the next tab. Next, we have Manage Class Types. With this, the user can manage the master list of class types that are available to every event. This includes modifying requirements that are taught at camp. Our next permission is Manage Groups. Manage Groups allows the admin to make changes to and for the group. This includes modifying the account profile, editing the members listed under my group, and managing the group's cart, which includes checking out. So, if they need to be able to make changes to the group or modify an event registration or facility booking on behalf of the group and finalize those event and facility changes through the cart, they will also need the managed group's permission. Next, we have Edit Previous Orders. This allows the user to change order notes, dates, and amounts in previously finalized orders. This should only be granted to those who are trained with how to do this responsibly. Then we have Add Refunds. This permission is needed to add refunds and generic convenience fees from available credit to put them in the cart. They will also need Manage Group in order to finalize their changes through the cart. The next permission on the list is View Group's Current Password. This permission is a legacy item that no longer does anything since we have encrypted all passwords, so no one can view a saved password. I covered how to support users with their accounts and forgotten passwords in the User Accounts and Registering for Events webinar. All right, the next permission is View Payment Reports. This permission is important for anyone who needs to download payment reports for reconciliation or payment tracking purposes. These payment reports are the ones that are pulled from this Legacy Air app, so I will be talking about those more later on in this webinar. Next up is Manage Facility Types, which is a blanket permission to add and edit facility types which are shared among all locations. This permission automatically grants all facility management permissions except for edit locations. So we'll talk about that when we get to the Locations tab a little bit more. Then Add New Locations allows the admin to add new locations to the system for use in all three of our modules. There's currently a known issue with this setting where the admin can add new locations, but they will not automatically get permissions for that location as they should. So the help text says they get permissions for newly added locations, and that is not the current behavior. So you'll probably only want to grant this permission to admins who also have permissions to manage all locations. And I will show you how to add those permissions when I get to the Locations tab. Then with Add New Event Types, this is similar to Add New Locations. Add New Event Types allows the admin to add new event types to the system, but again, there's currently a known issue with this setting, so the admin can add new event types, but they don't automatically get permissions. So with this one, you'll want to grant this permission along with permission to manage all event types. We'll talk about that on the Events tab. So now let's go to that Events tab and talk about those. Event permissions work a little differently from the general permissions, which are just check, they're granted or they're not. Event permissions can be granted wholesale to all events in the system, or you can select a specific event or multiple event types to grant to just those. And generally speaking, the permissions here are listed as the highest permissions at the top down to the most restricted permissions at the bottom. And I'm going to start with the lowest permission level today, which is event reports, and I will work my way back up this time. With event reports, the admin is allowed to view event and event type reports for their given events. So I can choose the specific event types from the list, like I said, which would limit their access, or I can check the All box to grant them to all event types. So let's select just one event type. So I'm going to select Scouts BSA Resident Summer Camp. So my admin can only access those reports for that event. This behavior of given to all or given to some is the same on all of the permissions here, and there are a few that have inherited permissions, which I will address as they come up. Our next level of permission is group event registration numbers on the admin side. And this is actually also a legacy permission. It no longer applies because we no longer have registration management on the admin side. But if you grant this one, the behavior there is that you will also get the next permission, which is event registrations group. This permission allows the admin to manage registrations on the group side. So with this, an admin can manage group registrations, including adjusting spots, named participants, class registrations, purchased products, and campsite assignments. They can also view reports in the group's registration and add payments to the cart. If you want the admin to be able to check out to finalize any of their changes, you will also need to assign Manage Groups on the General tab. Manage Groups registration only applies to current and future events unless Allow Historical Changes is given. So we'll talk about that one in a minute. Next up is Attendance and Requirements Completed. This is the permission needed to record completion data for classes like merit badges. Again, this applies to current and future events unless you also allow historical changes. When this permission is granted, the user will be able to enter requirements completed and attendance for any of the merit badges under this event. It does not have the ability to say only these merit badges. Next, we have event class schedule. This includes attendance and requirements completed, and this applies to adding, editing, or deleting classes in the schedule for the event. This is another permission that applies to current and future events, but can be paired with Allow Historical Changes to work with past events. And that brings us to the Allow Historical Changes permission. This permission does not work in isolation, but expands other permissions to include past events. This affects the event registrations in the group, attendance and requirements completed, and the event class schedule. Next, that brings us to the Message Center. The Message Center permission allows the admin to send messages from the Message Center to all registered groups for these events. This user can also edit all the messages in the Message Center, even if those messages were originally added for a different event. It's a shared list, so this grants them access to all the messages. They can only send them, though, to the event or event types. They can only send them to the event type or event types that they have access to. Then we have Manage Events. This is a high-level permission that grants the admin the ability to manage all events under the selected event types. They can add and edit events, set fees, recalculate pricing, and generate invoices for the events. This also includes all other event permissions. Lastly, we have Manage Event Types, which is like a system admin for the events module. This grants the user all permissions in the selected event types. However, it does not grant the ability to add new event types like it says in the help text. They will need the Add New Event Types from the General Permissions list paired with Manage Event Types given to all in order to continue to manage new event types. As I mentioned before, the Manage Event Types permission also includes managing products now.
So, Annika, if we could
Yes.
pause there and just talk a little bit more about permission inheritance.
Yes.
So, So kind of as you see here that some of these selections are grayed out, and those are the ones where it's cut off, but what it's saying is inherited. So Anake, can you select one of the ones? Yeah, thank you. Like testing, you can see the inherited text there. So you Annika won't be able to uncheck Message Center in this case because the permission is being given automatically by a higher order permission by manage events. So usually the way the system is designed just to save you time is that if you give someone like basically full access to manage event types, so the top permission, if you give, Annika, if you could scroll up,
Oops, I misunderstood. Ah,
if you give like manage event types for a event, it's going to automatically give basically all the permissions below that, the lower level permissions, because that just makes sense. If someone can edit your event type settings, then what's the point in trying to restrict them from editing your class schedule? That just doesn't really make sense. So that's why this inheritance works the way that it does. Now Onyx has been clicking around and making an interesting case study here for us here. So because manage event types in this case isn't being given to all of the event types, now we can select for the ones that, let's see. So because manage event types isn't being given to all the event types, it looks like it's being given to all of the ones except for adult leader training in this example. So now everything for all the permissions are now inherited for all of the event types other than adult leader training. And then now under each of these permissions, we can either select or unselect adult leader training, or we can also just select to give these sub permissions to all. And then Anik, if you go ahead and select manage event types back to all, now we don't have the choice anymore about whether or not to give the sub permission levels to all event types, because now the parent one, now all of the event types and all of the permission levels are inheriting that they all have permission, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and feel free to reach out to us if you need help understanding how to do this. But it's organized in this way so that someone could have, like, for example, limited permission to some event types, for example, just to pull reports. So you could give event reports to all event types, but then you could change it so that they are only a full admin in terms of being able to edit everything for one event type, like summer camp. So theoretically, someone at your council could have full admin rights to summer camp, but then be able to pull reports for every event type if that's something that's important for their role. Anything else that you can think of about how inheritance works, Annika?
I don't know if this is strictly speaking inheritance, because I think you covered that pretty well. But if you grant the all button for any of these permission levels, and a new event type is added to the system, you will automatically grant access to the new event type.
Right.
If you, for example, check the all button and then uncheck it, they will have access to all of the existing event types. But if a new event type is added, that will not automatically get added to their account. You will have to go in and manually select it or leave it off of what they can access.
Right. Yeah, actually, that's great to bring up. So that's actually the reason why, if you want to let an admin add new event types, you'll want to make sure that you actually check the all checkbox under manage event types, and that way they will have access to that new event type that they create.
That's right.
Great.
Okay. And so a lot of the behaviors that we've talked about under the events tab are going to be very similar on the locations tab. For the most part, the locations Permissions are going to pertain to the facilities module. So similar to events, these can be granted to all these can be granted to all locations or just a select location. And just like I did with the events module permissions, I'm going to start at the bottom for facilities module permissions. So the bottom-most permission, the least amount of responsibility in the facilities module, is view facility reports. With this permission, the admin can pull any reports for the selected locations. So this is great if you've got somebody who needs to be able to see who's going to be in camp this weekend because they're going to be the camp master. And again, we could select a specific location or grant them to all locations. The next permission level is Facility Reservations Override. And this permission allows the admin to override pricing and various booking rules based on dates for facility reservations, and this expands on facility reservations at the group level. So if you are offering the facility reservations override, you will also need to grant facility reservations group, but you don't have to also add the reservations override option if you don't want them to change anything. The facility reservations group permission lets the admin manage trips and reservations on the group side and make changes. Allowing the admin to manage reservations means they can add payment to the cart for a group. And if you want the admin to be able to check out and commit those changes, they will also need manage groups from the general permissions list. Next, we have blackout dates. This permission allows the admin to add and edit blackout dates for this location, and that helps with setting up your availability calendar. The next level is Manage Facilities, and this is like the system admin for the Facilities module. As a higher level permission, Manage Facilities allows the admin to add and edit the facilities at the assigned location or their locations, and it also grants all lower facility permissions. They're all inherited now. I would say the one exception to this is the Manage Facility Types permission from the General Permissions list. If you want them to be able to edit the shared facility types list, they will need this permission as well. And that makes a change on the Locations tab where now all of the permissions I've talked about so far are inherited. They're granted to all locations. So this admin who can manage that shared facility types list that's available to all locations, if you're going to give them that level of access, it's assumed that they're going to be doing management of facilities in all of your locations. Now this, I said, is the system admin level for the facilities module, and this gives them everything except for editing locations. And that's a higher level permission yet. And with this one, it does include all the other permissions in the Locations tab. And this permission level, the Edit Locations permission also allows changes to main location information, including name and address, booking rules for the Facilities module, the primary contact, and the trip notification custom message. The list of locations is used in all three modules, and basic information like name and address should only be changed if the location itself has changed, which doesn't happen all that often. For example, if the camp has changed its name, editing the location name makes sense. However, if an event was at your camp property last year and is now at, let's say, a church, an admin should remove the previously used camp location from the event type settings and choose the church location instead. Editing the camp location to use the church information will change the camp location on your summer camp, your facility location in the system, and it could create quite a mess. Because of this, please make sure your admins are trained in how to switch assigned locations prior to granting permissions to edit locations. If your council has a situation where a location was renamed in error and you need guidance on cleaning that up, please email us or book a training and we can take a look at that together. All right, now let's look at the Websites tab. Permissions for the Websites module are a little simpler with just 3 different levels of permission. The first one is Edit Websites. This allows the user to make changes to any page on the website. They can also build menus, change website settings, update the contacts, etc. This also includes the inherited permission for district pages and events. If you grant just the district pages and events permission, the admin is limited to managing district pages as well as calendar event pages and event registration pages that are assigned to district events. The system doesn't support more nuanced permissions like they only have access to a specific district. So you may want to be careful with whom you give this permission to and the level of training that they receive. This user can manage page menus and the list of resources, but they cannot edit the site navigation across the top of the page or across the top of the website, and they cannot edit contacts. The third permission level here can be granted in combination with either edit websites or edit district pages. What allow source code changes does is it grants permissions to make changes to the form code box, the map code box, and the sidebar content boxes for the pages that this admin is allowed to manage. Now, for those admins that have the edit websites level of access, this also allows the user to make changes under website settings to the featured calendar code box, the site-wide map in the footer, and the social widget box that shows up in the footer. Even if an admin doesn't have this permission, they can still edit page content in source view. So they could add buttons to their content or make changes to like hyperlinks and stuff like that. Allow source code changes should be granted in combination with one of the other 2 levels to manage parts of the website because, again, it doesn't do anything on its own if they are not able to edit anything else in the website. All right, now that we've gone through each of the various permissions available, I'd like to talk more about knowing which permission to add to each admin based on what they do for the council. I have a page on our admin manual that describes the permissions needed for various common roles at councils and camps. I have a list of these common roles here, and this list is interactive. So clicking on one will jump you down to the section that describes the various permissions commonly granted to that role. So let's look at a registrar. Typically, the registrar is responsible for things like posting payments, updating group accounts, building and managing event registrations, managing facility bookings, and building the calendar. The registrar's responsibilities vary from council to council, of course, so I suggest using this sort of recipe as a starting point and modifying what you assign based on how your council is structured and what you ask your registrar to do. This table includes whether the permission is required or optional for typical responsibilities of each role. But even if it's listed as required, you'll still want to think about whether to give the permission based on their responsibilities. So I'm going to kind of give some caveats to that as I go through this. So with this brought up for our registrar, I'm going to add a new admin That is going to be a sample registrar. Let's move that over there so I can see the list. Okay, so let's call our sample registrar Stephen Registrar. So I'm going to give Stephen enter Stephen's email, registrar@scouting.org. And then we'll set up an initial password that he'll want to change through the forgot password link. And we'll add his name here. Okay. All right, so in my list, I have several permissions that are listed under the general list. So let's start with those. Manage groups, I have listed as required. If the admin is going to be responsible for making any changes to purchases and put them through the cart, they will need this permission. Then we have edit previous orders. This one is listed as optional. This one would be needed if this registrar is responsible for going back in and adding anything, updating anything in previous orders and needs to like edit the notes. This permission does include some kind of sensitive abilities here, so you want to grant this only if they are trained and understand what the impact is of those changes, like updating the purchase amount, or I'm sorry, editing the payment amount. The next one, similarly, add refunds. This one would only be added if this is part of the registrar's purview. They add refunds to the cart and need to check out. They would need this along with managed groups. Then if you want the admin to be able to generate payment reports so they can help track payment history for events or for accounts, you can grant the view payment reports permission as well. All right, then we have manage facility types. I have this listed as optional in our recipe. It depends on if you're using the facilities module or not, of course, and also if the registrar is responsible for managing the facilities and adding or removing facility types, or even renaming them. Then we have add new locations, which I have listed as required. This is required if they are going to be building your calendar and need to add a new location for the roundtable that's at a different church this week. I would grant this permission to add new locations, and then I will talk a little bit more about the facility side of things in a sec. Similarly, add new event types. If they're responsible for managing events and building your calendar, they probably want to be able to add new event types. Now, like I was talking about before, you want to pair these with the Events module tab, granting them access to all of your event types if they're going to be managing everything on that side. And under Locations tab, I would also grant them edit locations to be able to add new locations to the or to edit existing locations for any reason. All right, I'm going to save our new registrar. And so now Stephen is in the system and can access everything in here after he resets his password. So now that we have our registrar, let's also add a merit badge counselor. So we'll click the new button to load a fresh form. And then in my web page, I'm going to click the top button to go back to my list of admin roles and click on Merit Badge Counselor to bring me to that recommended set of permissions. So let's call our new camp counselor Jennifer Camp. Okay. All right. Now, a merit badge counselor position is a lot more limited than a registrar. They're not going to be usually responsible for doing anything on the main event level or doing other big things in the system. So this role is a lot more closed in scope. So we're going to talk with, on the general tab, there's only one permission I recommend for this one, and that is manage groups. You can grant managed groups if part of the responsibility of this merit badge counselor is to help the group add walk-ins to the class. So if they have somebody walk in and you need to edit their registration, add them to the class, and finalize that so you can enter requirements completed, they need managed groups. If that's not their responsibility, that goes through like the camp office instead, then they don't need that. Then we'll go to the Events tab, and then I would only grant a couple of requirements or a couple of permissions here. The main one is going to be attendance and requirements completed. They're going to need to be able to enter their class completion records for their event. So I'm going to grant that only for my summer camp event type. Along with that, if they're going to need to be able to enter requirements completed more than a week out in the future from their event, you may also want to grant allow historical changes. So they aren't trying to meet a super hard and fast deadline of getting everything in right away. Now, if you have a policy of everything gets added in the week of camp, they probably don't need allow historical changes necessarily. And then along with the managed groups permission, if you want them to be able to add walk-ins to the registration, you'll want to also grant them group registrations or event registrations group permissions for summer camp so that they can go into that event, make their changes, use the managed groups permission to let them check out, and that's how you can complete that cycle of getting them in there. The last permission I would recommend for merit badge counselors is the event reports permission. And this allows them to go in and generate event class schedule reports, their instructor class rosters, and any other reports that are necessary for how they are helping the camp manage the class schedule. All right, let's click save. That's really all we need for this one. And now our merit badge counselor can enter completion data for their merit badges, add walk-ins to classes, and pull reports. Now let's imagine that our camp season is over and planning for next year won't take place for a couple of months. We don't need anybody in there making changes unless they are main council staff. So we can take our merit badge counselor's admin account and delete it. And that means that makes sure that Jennifer can't come in and make any changes in the off season. But if she comes back next year, you can check the display deleted users box and you can see Jennifer Camp's account right here. And then you can click the restore button to allow her to access the system again. Now, in the grand scheme of things, if you have I won't say that. In the grand scheme of things, if you have administrators whose roles change and their responsibility level in Tentaroo is different, you'll want to revisit their account to update their permissions to what they are now responsible for. And if they leave the council or are no longer in charge of managing anything in Tentaroo, you should delete their account to limit liability. All right, that covers managing admin users. Now let's talk about GL accounts. GL stands for General Ledger, and these accounts are used to track and manage money flow for the council budget. The master list of GL accounts can be found here, and system admins can manage this list. The full list can also be accessed and modified from within the events and facilities modules, but deleting unused GLs can only be done from here. You'll also notice that there is a core set of read-only GLs used for system items like refunds and credit card convenience fees. These cannot be modified. They are the same for every system. They will always track these core system items. Now let's look at the general system options list. This tab just has a few settings: require group address and require group phone number. If you have these boxes checked and the address or phone are not filled out for the group in the group profile, those fields will be required and the checkout, and the group has to fill out that data before they can finalize any orders. So let's go look at that real quick. All right, so this group has items in the cart and they have not filled out the address for this individual. So if I were to try to place this order, those would be flagged as required, and I would need to fill out something for their address before I can finalize the order. And this applies to both admins going through the cart for a group and the group going through the cart for themselves. And this ensures that for every group that goes through the cart for registration or facility booking, that you have contact information for the main person on the account. All right, back to the Legacy app. I'm actually going to switch which system I am using now in favor of one that has more accounting and registration data. So give me just 1 second, please. Okay, so now let's look at system-wide reports. This section includes three main categories of reports: groups, payments, and calendar. So looking at the groups section, there are two reports pulled at the system level that pertain to your list of groups in your system. The All Groups export includes all groups in your system, all the units, the families, and any other accounts that you have in the system. Information, let's go look at that one real quick here. All right, so information in this report includes the group name, the group type, the username that they use to access the system, and then the unit sponsor and group contact information. This also has a column for available credit, so you can see which accounts have credit on file. And then the last two, and then we have the event pricing tier and facility pricing tier information, so you can know which set of pricing this group is eligible for. And then for facilities, you can see if the group has the ability to book facilities enabled on their account. The last two columns are more information about how the group is using their account. The first column is when was the group added. So this is whenever the group was added to the system by the user, by the admin, or a Kayla or my.scouting import. And then the group last login date is when was the group last logged in as themselves to this account. And this is our demo system, so we have a lot of accounts that have never logged in as themselves, but this can help you understand if the group is active in your system or not. The second report in this section is the groups report, but just with credit. So these are filtered to just those accounts that have a value in column Q for available credit. You can use this report when clearing credit periodically, such as at the end of your fiscal year. I covered methods of clearing credit in the payments and credit webinar. Our next group of reports are the payment reports. These reports are based on a date range, so I'm going to enter a start date and an end date to set my range. And I'll put that as end date of today. Now, once you've set your date range, you can click on any of these reports to download the data and look at it. These reports are useful for tracking payments and reconciling transactions in the system, and I will cover how to read those in the bookkeeping and accounting webinar, where I'm going to go into depth on those topics, how to read them, and how to apply them. The next report is the calendar export, and this is also based on a date range. And this report gives you a snapshot of your calendar data, which you can then import into Google Calendar. Google Calendar allows individuals to sync up their calendars with the Google Calendar, so your users can see what's on your system calendar. Like I said, this is a snapshot, so it's not dynamic. It won't change when you add or update events. So be aware that there will be some modifications necessary if you add a lot of data all at once and need to go and update it with changes to your schedule. All right, the last section in the Legacy Air app that I want to talk about today is the Locations tab. This list is your master list of locations that's used in all three of the modules. And either here or in the main app, you can add or edit locations. Within the Legacy Air app, you can also delete locations and manage your event-specific campsites. So the event campsites are specific to the events module. These are different from the campsites used in the facilities module, which are set up separately, even if the details are all the same. Each campsite has the option for entering a capacity, and the capacities are informational. You can enter approximately how many people this campsite will house, but they are not enforced on users or admins. And this displays it as split between youth and adults, but the new app doesn't differentiate. So you can enter it all in one spot and have 34 youth and 0 adults, and it will accept that, and it's either way it's going to be displayed as 34 available spots when your users are selecting available campsites. Now they can pick a campsite that's smaller than will fit their group, and you can assign more spots to a campsite than the capacity states. So this is really, like I said, informational. You can add new campsites with either of these new buttons, and then that new campsite will be added to the list. If you delete a campsite, there is a display deleted button, so you can go back and restore that. So if that is something that you need to shut a campsite down for a season to let it rejuvenate while regrow grass, get less muddy, you can delete it when you don't need it, restore it when you're ready to put campers in there again. All right, those are the elements of your Tentaroo system that are still managed through the Legacy Air app. The main reasons councils visit this app are for managing admin users and downloading accounting reports. If you or your accounting management agency have questions about using any of the features I showed you today, please send us an email to support@tentaroo.com or schedule a training at admin.tentaroo.com/training.